In order to make sure that food is in the very best possible condition by the time it gets into the customer's hand, we have to do quite a bit in the world of refrigeration. There are two different kinds of lows that we run on the Walmart dedicated account with Martin. We run frozen and dairy, where the frozen is at negative 20 degrees on the reefer. And then we have dairy, which runs at 32 degrees. And that's the temperature you set. Now, this is a 3-zone temperature unit. Usually we'll put the frozen either in the middle or all the way at one side, depending on what it is. And usually that one side would be all the way in the front because that is the strongest air conditioning unit or refrigeration unit, I would guess. So the other kind that we do is meat and produce. And meat usually goes at 30 degrees and produce goes at 40 degrees. And I like it best when meat is in the middle because meat weighs more than produce does. And it's better there for the weight distribution because if the meat's in the very back and then I have to go out of town, it's probably going to overload the trailer tires. And I'm going to have to shift the tandems all the way back. And even then it may still not be underweight, be within the weight guidelines. But one of the things I've learned is there's a couple of things. Number one is if I am not going over scales, I won't weigh. I will not scale it. So there is a scale at the Walmart DC as we go to leave. I won't scale it. I can kind of feel from the truck how it feels, how it's gonna. It's one of those things after you drive it for a while, you can kind of feel how it is. If it's lighter, if it's heavier, if it's harder for the truck to pull, it's going to be probably heavy. And plus we have to enter in the weight, the gross weight when we go out anyway. In that on the tablet. But if I'm not going over scales, I don't bother because nobody, even if I was pulled over, nobody is going to say, well, follow me over to a scale. I suspect that you're overweight. At least I don't think they do that. I would take my chances because most likely I'm going to be under anyway. I pretty much have a gut instinct that I could follow when I feel like I'm going to be over. The whole truck feels different. It really does. If you have more weight on the steers, more weight on the drives versus more weight on the trailer tires, you feel that too. You kind of get a feel for the trailer. It's kind of cool in the tractor, how much weight you're pulling. The other thing that I've picked up on with regards to managing temperatures is, let's just say that I'm doing meat and produce. So I've already mentioned that, let's say this is the very front of the truck. So the truck is here, the trailer is right here, and then we have two more zones. So if this is 40 degrees produce, 30 degrees meat, and 40 degrees produce, they are separated by bulkheads that are temperature controlling pads. So that way they manage the temperature between the layers very well as long as you press them into place. But here's the thing that if you pull off of the back, let's just say you pull off here and then you have to move out some of the other ones for the next store you're going to in order to get to the meat here, then the produce comes back on. No problem. You basically shift the bulkheads up so that way it pushes on the meat. Because if you take out some of the meat, you don't take the bulkhead back to the same place. They slide. They have tracks in the ceiling so that you slide it all the way back to the meat and then you put the produce in front. And it's really neat the way that it's designed. Let's just say that this is the back of the trailer. And this is the part. I'm going to turn it around this way so that way we can see where the tractor part is. So we have 3 zones. Let's say right here. There is a refrigeration unit in the very back here that blasts it this way, stopped by a bulkhead right there. Then there's an air conditioning unit that's over here in the middle. And then there's one in the back. The bulkhead that's in the very back is actually not able to push past this AC unit. The track stops. So there's only so much you can put in this section. Over here, you can slide this all the way forward as much as you want. So as long as this rear temperature, that refrigeration unit, as long as you've cleared off everything back there, some people will kill that refrigeration unit and just turn it off. And being that you can move the bulkheads as forward as backwards as you want to, because this area here is going to be temperature controlled from the reefer in the front, and this one here is going to be basically controlled from the middle AC unit. So what I will do I don't do that, the killing thing. What I will do, because what you can do basically is if you push the meat all the way to the front and you have produce still in the back, you would normally drop down the bulkhead again. And that way they're separated. And then you would put your strap, you're allowed one strap. They used to allow multiples, but about a month or two ago, they changed it and said you should only be carrying one strap with you. So you make sure the bulkheads are all the way up, and then you push up the other pallets up against it and then strap it off. Now, once I am past the zone 3, the very back, and all I have is meat in the front zone or the front 2 zones, what instead I will do, instead of killing the 3rd zone, even though it's climate controlled on the 2nd zone, what I will do is I will turn zone 3 to the temperature matching 2. The reason why is because quite often we will have to take that meat off in order to, or if we have to take it off, we will have to take it off in order to unbury the produce. When we do that, though, the meat is out, is sitting outside. Sometimes it's inside the trailer. Sometimes there's too much of it and you have to stack it in pallets outside. But, the loading process goes pretty quickly. So it's only out there momentarily. It's not enough to thaw. And then you put it back in. But what I always do is I like to use two of these refrigeration units to cool things down and to maintain the coolness. I think it would get up to speed quicker than having just one do the entire inside. Even though it may be that it's closer to that unit, it may be better. But still, I feel better about it when I have both refrigeration units running. It's probably not the way the company would want me to do it. They'd probably say just throw it on the bulkheads, even if you can't push all the way up, but then I would need to have 2 straps. So if I'm following your policies, I can't have 2 straps, then I cannot connect up a strap on the inside, throw down the bulkhead, and then strap on the outside too. Because then the bulkheads do have straps kind of built into it that you can use for the E-track on the side. But I was told not to trust that. It's going to work, but I was told in training, don't rely on that to work. It usually does, but don't rely on it. So anyway, that's a little bit on how I manage temperatures. Let's talk about this week. First of all, I missed a few days because I had something I had to handle out of town. But when I came back into town, I thought I had 3 days before I had home time. Apparently, I had 2 days. So the first day was I went to, first of all, when I came back into town, I was in New Jersey. So I came back from New Jersey, and because of terrible storms in Atlanta, I was supposed to arrive at 4 p.m. But because of terrible storms in Atlanta, they closed the airport down for about 6 hours. That meant everybody trying to get out of Atlanta and everyone trying to fly into Atlanta was delayed, and they had to reschedule. Some planes were circulating around Atlanta in any way. So when they finally opened up the airport again after the storms, they had to get people out, they had to get people in, and before they were going to start to take in planes from other places like New Jersey. So it took a little while, and they kept rescheduling. Originally, my flight was out at 4 p.m., then it changed to 4:45, then it changed to 5:30, then it changed to 7:15, then to 9:30, and we were wondering if they were going to cancel it, and then it went to 10. And even though it was 10, we didn't actually load the plane until 10:30, and we didn't get out of there until probably almost 11:15. By the time I got to Atlanta, it was late. So anyway, the only reason I'm saying all of this is because it explains that even though I was reversing my sleep schedule, going from day mode to night mode again, I was tired during that part. You can't really nap on the plane. The guy next to me smelled god awful too. I don't know why. But the only real point I'm making in this is that when I finally went home, I was tired. I just took a short 30-minute nap, and I got up and I was still exhausted because the 30-minute nap is not really enough for me. But I didn't want to just have it completely. I take that back. No, that's not the day I had a 30-minute nap and it didn't do good. That was the next night. So that night I went home. I was exhausted. I set my alarm for 30 minutes. But in my sleep, I turned it off and I slept another a total of like almost 4 hours. So when I got up, it was about 8 a.m. And I'm like, oh no, that's just totally going to screw me up when I try to go to bed at 11. So anyway, I ended up doing what I normally will do if I am having to push myself to go to sleep. I'll take valerian root, which calms your mind, so that way you can settle down your brain and not be thinking about everything. And then I also took melatonin, which I don't usually do. And I set the alarm for my normal time of 6 p.m. But I normally get up at about 2.5, 3 hours into the day. And this was no different. This time I looked at it and I saw that I had a 3-stop meat and produce. And when I looked at it, I'm like, wait a minute now. That's a neighborhood market that's a 4 a.m. store. So I called the office and I said, hey, is this a 4 a.m. store? And they said, yep, it sure is. And I'm like, well, if I'm leaving at 7, I would get there at like midnight, because it was only to Thompson and Grovetown. That's all it was. It was just 2 stops. And Grovetown, I'm sorry. I take that back. It was originally, it was something else and then Grovetown. It was a 2-stop also, but it was something else and then Grovetown. But it was the Grovetown that's a 4 a.m. store. So I would have gotten there by midnight, if not earlier, because that's only like 100 and some odd miles, like 120, 30 miles, something like that. By the time I went to the other stop and then went over there, I'd be sitting there waiting for 5, 6 hours. So I called the office and said, in nice words, WTF. And they said, oh, we'll see if we can get that fixed with the planner. I said, thank you. When I woke up, again, because I was still tired, probably because I was overtired at that point, but I ended up taking another melatonin because I still had like 4 hours before I had to get up. So I set the alarm again. And this is the first time I've ever taken melatonin twice, which means I basically had a double dose over a regular sleep time. So this time when I got up, it was a 2-stop in Thompson and then Grovetown. Then I had a second load that was Cornelia and Estanole. Yeah. None of those were an issue. Good stores. Got back and it was probably like 7 a.m. by the time I got home. No problem. The next day, well, that night when I went to sleep, and I got up I got up the normal time. Anyway, the job I was sent was Blue Ridge store at the Blue Ridge Mountains, and then up to Knoxville, Tennessee, and then back. It ended up being a 549-mile day, which was awesome. The interesting thing about that was when I pulled out of Blue Ridge, the Blue Ridge store, if you look at it on an overhead view, you pull out to the store and go left onto the Oconee Highway. After you drive maybe 7 miles, something like that, it comes to a T intersection where you come and you have to choose left or right. I went left. And then it wiggles around through the mountains. There ended up being some bad storms the bad storms I mentioned from New Jersey. And those bad storms apparently were enough to shake down some branches. Well, when you're driving down the road, the truck is tall, 13.66 inches, 13 feet, 6 inches. But the top of the truck is able to go through tree branches and stuff because they cut out the tree branches up to a certain height, so that way trucks can get through it just fine. Now, there was probably some sort of a branch that had fallen, because as I'm driving through there, you're going left and right and only going like 25 miles an hour, maybe 30 in areas. The speed limit's, I think, up to 55. Only cars are going to be able to do that, because I think it was going mainly 40 to 45. But this one area, it got really tight. And I always glanced at the GPS to see what the roads are doing, so that way I know how to manage the speed. That way I'm not slamming on the brakes or approaching something too fast. And as I started to go around the turn, there was just a branch. There was, and you could see where the cutout is, but it looked like there was some leaves and stuff like that, branches that had come down below that. And as I went through there, I hear a big loud thud. It was a loud thud. And so I was like, yikes, I don't know what just happened there, but I'm about to get off of this road in the next 20 or so miles. I'm going to turn on to 75 North. And then from there, there's a fuel stop I'm going to stop at Nayota, Tennessee, I believe it was. I stopped there one night like 6 months ago. Um, but when I stopped there, I was going to do a check out the truck. Well, it ended up being that the front of the cab, like the right above the windows, the little curb part that goes up, there was apparently a big thick branch in there because it was able to bust in a little bit on the fiberglass up there. Enough, not enough to really do damage, but enough to be, if it rains, it could rain inside the truck or inside that area. I don't know what's inside that area, but I know that it should not be something that you put rain in. So I called it in when I got to my location, which was a Sam's Club in Knoxville. I called it into the office, told them what was going to go on. They said, "Well, take pictures." This I'm going to when I get back when it's daylight, so that way I make sure I have enough light to actually take pictures. And then there's a process they want you to do where you email the pictures to the office and email it to the risk group. That is a group that deals with collisions and if you violate your clock, if you get a speeding ticket, any of that kind of stuff, they help deal with that kind of stuff. And I'll come back to that, but that's basically something that happened. Unless I was driving 10 miles an hour to 15 miles an hour and wanted to steer into the oncoming lane, there wasn't going to be a way for me to avoid that branch. So anyway, it was a good day though, long day. When I got back to the office though, I was called into the office from the planner on duty, the lady planner. And I thought she was going to talk to me about the branch, but it ends up no. She ended up talking to me about some new policies that I need to be aware of since I was out of town. Getting out and looking is something that they are now mandatory. They say that it is, they want us to do that every single time we stop and back up. So if I come to the DC and I have to back up, goal. When I get to a customer site and I back up, goal. And in order to indicate that I'm doing this, I need to send a freeform message either through the tablet or through my cell phone saying simply goal. That's going to let them know that I did it. Another thing is they started this like a month and a half ago, something like that, where they're supposed to be putting a strap on the very back of the trailer. You open up the trailer and there's not been very many straps that I've noticed, but they're supposed to be putting a strap in there and you're supposed to turn it back in there. But that is a new thing where I'm supposed to take a picture, email it to the office and let them know if there's no strap. Then there was, basically what this boils down to is they're also micromanaging quite a bit. Now, I know this is their company. They can require their employees to do procedure, but it's starting to get to the point where it feels like it's micromanaging a little bit because it's like, you must do this, you must do this, you must do this, you must do this, you must do this. One thing is, as we know, if you do a post-trip inspection, you're basically certifying that you are good with the way that the truck and or trailer were left. They want us to be extremely nitpicky with it in case there is something that we can, like if there's a leak or if there's dented rub rail, they want us to be very, very detailed with it. That way we can get that resolved. Our company's CSA score is not great. So many of our drivers had to be pulled in for level 1 inspections. And as soon as that happens, there's almost likely going to be something that slips through the crack, which means that we're not going to improve our score at all. So be aware of fuses. Fuses was a big thing about a week or two ago. Maybe last month. And every single one of the trucks I get in now, I always check for fuses. And most of them have it. Only one didn't. And I end up going inside and saying, I need some. But they want us to be extremely nitpicky with the post-trip. That way, if there is any issue, it can be resolved before it becomes a CSA issue. And with regards to the micromanaging, there's a lot of procedures they want us to do. Like sometimes you pull up at a customer site, like tonight, pulled up at a customer site, and there's 4 docks. There's only a trailer all the way in the left, and I go for the middle of the 3. And it's just plenty of pull-up room, and you have plenty of room to back up, to line up, and then you just back straight up. They still want you to goal, and they still want you to send the free-form message. Even when there's nothing out there, there's no obstacles or anything like that, it's still the requirement now. Annoying, but hey, again, they've had drivers that have crashed into things or backed into things and something like that, so they're just trying to mitigate that. They want us to all, be safe, and they don't want us to hit anything, that kind of thing. All right. All right. Then there was when I was inside talking to the office, basically, she ended up talking to me about all these new procedures, and that's the gist of it. There was a few others, and I had to think about it and what we're going to be doing and how and that kind of stuff. And then I said, okay, well, I'm going to go in tomorrow. And then she says, you're not on schedule tomorrow. I said, well, I've only worked 2 days. I might as well. And so she's like, I have no problem with you working. So she scheduled me on something awesome. She scheduled me on 6 stops, which I was so happy about. It was Greenwood, South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, Greer, South Carolina, Greer, Greer. So a bunch of Grees. And then Taylor's, and then Athens, Georgia. 6 stops, and all of them were only like 4 or 5 pallets. Now, probably these trucks had additional ones going in there with more, but this was probably additional. But I tell you, I had no problem getting that thing done, and it was probably 4 something when I got back. So I had like 4.5 hours, something like that left, and I was like, well, not enough time to do anything, but definitely glad to have done that because it was good mileage. It was good mileage, like 400 and some odd miles. Or wait a minute, was it? No, it wasn't. It was probably closer to 340, maybe something like that. Because the Greenwood, actually, no, it would have been probably about there because there was 2 stops in Greenwood, then Greenville, then Greer, which is close, and then Taylor's, which is pretty close, and then back Athens, Georgia, which is on my drive back. Not a big deal. The big thing on that particular day was when I started out and I was backing into my trailer. Now, here's the thing. You have on the back, you have your 5th wheel, okay? The 5th wheel normally sits like this on the back. As you bring a trailer in there, it's this way. As you bring a trailer in there, what happens is that the lip of the trailer pushes up and it flattens this out, and then the kingpin goes in where the shaft locks in place. And if the kingpin goes anywhere in this little gap, it's going to pull in, you'll see the trailer move, and then you'll grab it. But if it goes and misses it completely, it goes up, and then the kingpin falls down on the other side. And because it sits like this, and once it flattens out and it goes to the other side, it goes back like this, and it locks the kingpin back there. And if you're not careful, and if you were to continue on up, you'd end up crushing the reefer, or you could, I guess, or driving the tractor into the trailer, I guess. But the reason I'm mentioning this is because I lined up and I started to go back, but it didn't quite sound right. I looked at things in the mirror, and I have good depth perception. But when I lined this up and stuff, I was on alignment. But it ends up being that the trailer was a little bit, the trailer was jacked way up. So it was way up here. And as it started to go over, it ended up doing this number, and it didn't catch the edge of the skid plate here. It caught it probably right about here. So it missed it barely. And then I felt it going up, but it didn't sound right. The kingpin was going up on the skid plate. And I'm listening to it. I'm like, wait a minute. So slow down. And I'm like, something doesn't feel right about this. And I paused for a second, made sure that the suspension had a chance to adjust. And then I'm like, I'm going to push on just a little bit more, just take my foot off the brake and gently apply the gas in a quick little burst and then hit it. And I heard something that didn't sound right. And when I lined it up, I did not get out like Schneider told us to get out to make sure and then crank down the kingpin to make sure that it is even with the bottom of this. I didn't do that. Normally I do. Of course, the one day you don't is the day that this happens. I lined it up and I said, 6 stops, I need to get moving. So when I backed up, I was like, okay, well, this is what I got to do. Ends up being that the Kingpin, sure as the world, is when I heard a click noise. The click did not occur when the Kingpin hits into the fifth wheel. I heard a different type of sound and I instantly hit the brake and I go back there and look. Kingpin here. And I looked at that and I said, oh crap, that sucks. But it was barely, I mean, like if you could see the back of the fifth wheel here, the Kingpin was here, which means it was extremely high, which is weird because when I looked at it and lined up on it, it looked right to me. I don't know why it wasn't. And I don't know how I failed to see that the height was different. This is why I always get out and look at it though, before I back up. Schneider best practices. So I looked at this and I said, all right, what I'm going to do is, because it's just barely up, what I'm going to do is drop the airbags. So I went inside, hit the airbags button, and I see the rear suspension go down. I'm like, all right, awesome. And as I looked at it, it looked close. It was like if you can imagine, this is the back of it. I'm reversing everything now. It went from like an inch down. It only went up to like this, but I didn't want to make sure there was any risk of it hitting, even though it looked like it was going to clear it. So what I did is I grabbed my ratchet strap and I put it underneath the skid plate, just under here, enough so that way it would be a clear, smooth sailing all the way back. So that way this would flatten out. This is like 4 inches now. So as soon as I put it under there, I knew there was no way in the world I was going to hit the fifth wheel into the Kingpin. So by putting it under there, I basically took the plate from this angle to flat. And then I gently pulled forward and got it out from underneath it. Then I removed the strap, cranked the crap out of the very high trailer, which is what they warned us about in training. They said, too many of these drivers leave it too high. But yeah, I just, you don't take that when you don't take the coupling process fast. And I was like, okay. And it just, the only thing I could gather is that I was a little bit off and I caught it not perfectly in the thing here. It was too high and it was over to the side. So it probably just slid it up, because when I looked at the fifth wheel later, I did see a mark that looked different shade of smoothness before I coupled back up. Once I coupled up and then inspected at the end of the day, it looked fine. So it didn't catch much of it. All it basically did was probably knock off a little bit of grease, but then, it's going to come back anyway. As soon as you couple it, it's going to, grease is going to smear around. Ended up not being a big deal because I was observant, because as soon as I said, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound right. In a perfect world, what I should have probably done is, as soon as it didn't sound right, put on the brake, stop, and go back and look. But I thought it might have just been my mind playing tricks on me, which I shouldn't have second guessed myself. That night, that night was 6 stops, and I was just kind of thinking, okay, I got to get moving. And I was thinking, it's probably okay. I'll just stay attentive to it. And then when it didn't sound right, I stopped. Didn't do any damage, anything. It's just something I was aware of. And it was a learning experience. I'm going to make sure that in the future, I always make sure that I line it up and get out and look. Main thing is, in trucking, don't go fast on anything you do. It's going to be bad if you do. You're going to tailgate somebody. Someone's going to slam on the brakes for no reason. Somebody's going to whip out in front of you. Something is going to happen. So you just got to be aware that anything can happen. That was a pretty awesome day, though. 6 stops, and none of them were very big. And every single one of those stores was on the ball, really, really on the ball. Then, I think I mentioned this before, but The company is now starting to do fuel assignments, but I don't like the way they're doing it, as opposed to Schneider, which puts the fuel assignments into dispatch and just says, this is your next stop. This is where you need to go. They send it to you in the tablet. They send it to you as a message. It's a separate thing, recommended fuel stops. The issue I have with this is that where Monroe is on the east side of Atlanta. If you were to get on 20, there's 3 major fuel stops that you'll run into on the way out towards Augusta. It's going to be exit number 114, exit 138, and exit 190, 182, 184, something like that. If you take the other road over to 85, you're going to have exit 160, 166, and that's really it in Georgia, or exit 129. Brazelton, which is the one that Schneider always routed me to on the way to pods. If you go up 75, it's there's different ones up there too. There's 296, 318, 320, and 324, I think, in Georgia. And then on the way south, there's the one in Noonan. If you go down 85. If you go down 75, there's a couple before you get to Macon. On the other side of the pilot that's on 285 there off of that has to Boulder Crest Road, which is the one you don't want to go to. That one's a crazy one. But yeah, plenty of fuel stops. And as you drive around, you see which ones are the best price. But anyway, you heard me say before that I started to just ignore the messages because it sends you so much about, that's just nonsense. So I hate to say it, but Pavlov's dogs, when it says there's a new important message and I look at it, it's not important. There's new important message has arrived. I look at it, it's not important. It's the same automated message that goes out. After a while, you start ignoring them. I will look at my phone and I will scroll to exactly the message I care about. I will get the information off of that and then I'll just exit out of it. That's in the app. But I will ignore so many things because I just don't care. I hate to say that, but the fuel assignments, I ignore them. Because because one of the things you've noticed if you've been watching this channel for a while is that I always pay attention to the fuel prices. You have to look at everything. And as I'm driving around, I would look at and observe which prices are best. And I would make a mental note that these prices are best. And so as I'm going back the other direction later, because I don't fuel up on my way to a customer location, I fuel up on the way back. So when I fuel up on the way back, that's when I do my stop. That way I'm not delaying getting to a customer. That way I drop off at the customer and then on my way back to the DC, that's when I fuel up. And that's when I'm going to know the best price anyway. So I'm going to stop at the stop. If I need fuel, I'm going to stop to get diesel at the very best price. Now, Martin may also have a deal like Schneider did to get a better deal, to get a better lower price on the fuel, on the diesel. I'm not 100% sure though. But I'm very aware of what's going on there. So the fuel assignments, I don't feel bad about ignoring those emails. On the note of fuel, though, I think I mentioned that there's a sensor at the top of the trailer. And it goes to this little bitty sensor in the ceiling inside of our fuel island at the DC. There's two places, pump 1 and pump 2. Pump 1 is annoying because you have to get out of the driver's side, go around to the passenger side. You have to take the pump off the hook, off of the thing over there, lay it on the ground, then run back around and fuel up the reefer on the other side. On pump 2, you just get right out and turn on the pump at the reefer. The reason I don't like pump number 1 is because going around to the other side, these sensors, the sensor is in the ceiling. It's a very narrow beam like this. And if it misses that sensor either left and right or forward or backwards, it just sits there. When you go up under it and try to fuel up, it just sits there. It will not give you any pressure. Just will not give you fuel. So then you have to go forward a little bit or backward a little bit, and you have to go and try to find the exact place of the sensor, and you're not going to, so you end up going inside. It used to be that we would go inside and get this a part of a load load securement bar that had a tag on it, and we would use the tag, put in the information, and then we could fuel up. After a while, though, they started to not let us have it. They would go with us to use the tag. Some of these guys, these engineers, or the mechanics, what they will do is they will go out there with a tall stick with a mirror on top of it, and they won't use the tag. They'll say, go forward, go backward, go forward, go backward. And they'll tell you how to dial it in. Then if it doesn't work, when they're happy with it, which is annoying because then you're in the truck and you're looking at it. By the time you go and get someone, and by the time they mosey over there and they're ready and they're just doing this number, yeah, okay. You might need to back up and then pull over a little bit toward the middle and then come back. It's like so annoying, all this crap. But, you have to do what they tell you to. Otherwise, they don't have to use the little tag and let you. I really frustrated at that system. It is probably the worst system I've seen. The beam needs to be wider, so that way we don't have to be exactly precise. If the beam were wider, it'd be fine. Or make it put it in a place where as soon as we pull in, it's going to be checking to see if that sensor is there. And if it detects a sensor at all, allow us to fuel up for the next 2 minutes. Because if you pull up there, you come to a stop, you change your status, and you get out, it might be a minute. By the time you run around there, take the other side off the hook, and then walk all the way back around and then feel that there's no pressure in it, that's when it's been 2 minutes. But as long as you don't waste time, give it 3 minutes if you want. And what I've seen some people do is they've just left the right side of it off, the passenger side, the curb side, they'll just leave it off the hook. Because it gets so annoyed with having to go in there and have them do it, and the sensors don't ever work properly. So it'd be really nice if they widened out that beam. Because we're apparently not trustworthy enough to be trusted with that tag. I don't know why. Last thing I'm going to say is about the tree branch. After I went to bed, after my 6th stop, I woke up, and there was a message there to call the risk team. And the voicemail said, I need you to call the risk team about the truck that you hit. I'm like, about the other truck you hit is the wording. And I was like, the other truck I hit? I didn't hit a truck, And so I quickly called the risk number that ended up being the lady that picked up who called me. I said, all right, I'm calling you up and I'm calling you back. And I tell you this, I did not hit another truck. You must be confusing people. And she said, well, who is this? And I told her, and then she looked it up and says, yeah, there was no truck that you hit. And I'm like, okay, well, that's what she said. My voicemail. She said, oh, sorry, I just got through. I was dealing with that also today, so I must have said the wrong thing. I'm like, okay. I told her I was the tree branch, and she asked me exactly what happened, and I said, if you're looking for it on the camera, the front-facing camera, it would be at midnight 18 in that minute, because as soon as it happened, I looked down at the time, and so 0018. So that's when you would see it. And I told her that. I gave her all the information, going around a turn, keeping it slow, which is I think there's for speed limit 35 to 25 speed limit turns. And I said, and I was coming around, and then it looked like a branch that was, I said, it didn't look like it was damaged. It just looked like leaves, because we're in the summer. We're approaching summer now. So the trees are going to thicken up. And I thought maybe it just wasn't a branch that had been trimmed properly. So as I drove under it, thud. It ends up being that I thought about it in retrospect. It must have been a branch that broke during the storms and it fell down. And in that was a branch. So anyway, she says, doesn't sound like a preventable to me. And I said, I would hope not, because if it were preventable, I would have done it. Unless it meant me having to pull into the oncoming lane or do something unsafe like that. And then I wouldn't have done it. And she's like, yeah, it didn't sound preventable to me. I'm like, me neither. And then I said, well, and she put together this report and then sent it off. And then she said, they should be contacting you back with their judgment later. We'll see what happens there, if they contact me back. But anyway, that's the latest. As of now, I've been with Martin driving for 3 months. Actually, maybe more than that. Yeah, it's been longer than that. Barely. Yeah. So anyway, there you go. Thanks for watching.